Hello, and welcome to this episode of Ruckcast. Ruckcast is your opportunity to listen in on unscripted conversations about cutting-edge Ruckus Wi-Fi and wired networking technology, Ruckus business, and just interesting innovations that impact the computer networking industry today and in the future. Ruckcast is brought to you directly from CommScope Ruckus Education. For more learning opportunities, be sure to log on to training.ruckuswireless.com and view content on our Ruckus Education YouTube channel. Simply search for Ruckus Education on your YouTube homepage. Without further ado, here's your host, Matt Clouda.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for joining me. It's good to have you here.
Hey, Matt. How are you today?
Doing good. Doing real good. So one thing I'd just ask, if you wouldn't mind, introduce yourself. Tell us what your role is, who you are, and what you do.
My name's Chris Collura. I'm Vice President of Federal Sales for CommScope. Been with the company going on 15 years now. Have a legacy sales engineering experience on the networking side. Previous experience earlier in my career on the infrastructure side, managing a team that deployed infrastructure products and cabling infrastructure at the Kennedy Space Center. Was my first job out of the service. Was in the Air Force in a Intel unit in Athens, Greece. Before that, had a football scholarship to the Citadel before joining the service.
What position did you play?
Offensive guard.
Oh, yeah. Got to protect them. That's awesome. Well, first, thank you for your service. That's always a huge honor to be able to sit down and talk to somebody with that kind of colored history. And I know people are listening to this. They can't see it because the screen's not recorded, but you have a beautiful American flag and a shadow box behind you and a space shuttle. Which shuttle is that?
That is that's Challenger.
That's Challenger.
Yeah. I worked at the Kennedy Space Center for a couple of years, as I mentioned, and was in the shuttle operations group. We provided broadband and networking communications, some of the first Ethernet networks that were deployed on Kennedy Space Center. I was a part of managing. So that was a real interesting part my career. I've always, one of the things that attracted me to sales was after being in the Air Force and after working at the Kennedy Space Center, really liked the aspect of being involved in the kind of the tip of the spear and the mission oriented jobs really have attracted me.
Just when I think I've done some pretty cool things in my career around networking, I hear something like that, and I'm like, yeah, no, that pretty much just pales in comparison.
That was rocket science. It really was.
I'm sure that saying got thrown around once in a while, too.
Yeah, just once or twice.
Yeah. I was actually fortunate enough to see, I think it was Endeavor launch when I was in Florida one time, and it was a night launch. And I'm a knucklehead from the middle of Wyoming, so this to me at 18, 19 years old, you can imagine how big my eyes got, but I've never seen sunlight at night like that. It was amazing. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen. They're just absolutely amazing.
If for anyone listening, if you've never seen a launch, now that we're back to space, go and see one. You won't be disappointed, especially if it's at night.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. I agree. So, one of the reasons why I invited you and wanted to have you come in and talk about this is when we talk about different business units that we have, within CommScope Ruckus, they all have a little bit of a different personality, right? And one of the biggest differences in personality that we've really kind of looked at from a technical perspective is the federal space. And there's many reasons for that. And now we look at, CommScope has brought all these different products and technologies together, and the product portfolio has grown exponentially. From your perspective and the role you're in, what kind of things have you seen in that space where having that broader portfolio has really helped you and enabled you?
It is very interesting because we have a much larger installed base, and through the CommScope products are our Systemax and Uniprise products are pretty well distributed throughout the federal government. On the Ruckus side, we were more narrow. A couple of very large programs, like the Navy NGEN program, WIN-T, Defense Healthcare. Thousands and thousands of switches installed them, but it was a couple of larger programs, a little bit narrower. So it's actually really nice having now a fuller set of products, and being able to really kind of uniquely position the company as a full spectrum, wireless spectrum provider, along with that cabling infrastructure. Kind of sets us apart from our competitors, from, I guess, both sides, right? From a legacy CommScope and from a legacy Aris Ruckus standpoint. So that's a big advantage when you can go to the government and agencies with an offering where the other guys can't stack up a full solution like you can. It's just easier for them to do business if they can go to one place and get all of those technologies.
So, and you're absolutely right. Once you come to the table with the whole package, that's really when people buy into that, because it's so much simpler. So when you kind of looked at this and entered this space, what were some of the big eye openers to your customers when you brought that whole package to them? What were some of the different technologies and products and features that they looked at and said, I want that?
I would say the first one is related to the 5G play, and it's that's the buzzword in the government right now. Everyone is looking to do trials and how is 5G going to work. So our DAS products and the Era product within building wireless, has been a really big draw for our customers. Really, then to be able to expand into the rest of the wireless we do with CBRS and with Wi-Fi and now Wi-Fi 6, along with the switching, and you tie in that cabling infrastructure. It's a really powerful story. But that 5G story, being able to deliver that in-building access with the current bands that are available is kind of a big draw. The other thing that was kind of surprising to me was our powered fiber. So there's a lot of applications for sensors, cameras, you name it, that need to be put out in a place where maybe there's no power. They can run fiber. But that one's been kind of an interesting play, and seeing the people want to talk about that technology, and that kind of builds off that CommScope legacy. So, I would say DAS, and then the surprising part is the powered fiber.
We actually haven't had a discussion about powered fiber on the podcast, and I think it's a really interesting topic because of just the different doors it opens. So I know, because when you talk about federal government type customers, there's only so much you can probably talk about. But what are some of the different ways that you're seeing that not only be implemented and applied, but what doors is that opening for them from a technology perspective?
Well, like I was talking about, it's literally remote sensors, or maybe I have a warehouse that I want to put an access point and all the way at the other end. So if I can run one fiber strand down there, not have to worry about connecting power up, but I can run a PoE device off that access point and not only have Wi-Fi access, but put a camera up there. It's just really versatile. The other thing is, you don't think about it a lot, but it's checkpoints, right? I need a new vantage point, or I want a camera, feeding, looking at a different direction from a security standpoint, right? So there's just those unique things that come into play that are interesting. We've also looked at flight lines, along the edge. Sometimes you can run fiber along the edge of a flight line, you can't touch it. So I can't put up new posts, right? Dig up that. So some of that access way is interesting. So yeah, I would just say it's those hard to reach, hard to access places. And the nice part about the military is a lot of times, especially on a base, they own the right of way, right? So you don't run into the same issues that you would necessarily in a city with can I run it? Do I have the right way of access? So a lot of those problems go out of the way. So I would say it's not the biggest volume, but I think bringing value to your customers and solving a unique problem is always something that gets you in the door, helps you gain trust with those customers because other people aren't talking about what problem their customers are trying to solve. They're just trying to pitch them a solution. So that's definitely a case where that product is helping solve a problem that others aren't.
Yeah, and the really cool thing about that too is it removes the distance limitation that Cat 5, Cat 6 gives you. I mean, that's gone altogether, right? Yep. That's really cool. So you touched on an access point. When you look at it's always funny. I talked about different characteristics with customers. What kind of Wi-Fi or wireless trends, not just Wi-Fi, but wireless in general, what kind of trends are you seeing in your space that might differ from, the private sector or Fortune 500 sector?
Well, security is always a major concern, and the company has invested a lot of time, effort into ensuring that our products meet the federal certifications. So on our Wi-Fi side, we have FIPS Common Criteria and the Department of Defense APL certification. So that's always important. We do sell products into areas that don't require those certifications. So Wi-Fi for standard morale, welfare, and recreation use is really big. Bases are really cities, right? When you get right down to it. They have grocery stores, gas stations, hotels, parade grounds, everything inside that base. So, outdoor Wi-Fi, general access, just like every other part of life, right? People want that connectivity. So we're seeing that access with service providing partners that provide those. The other trend that we're starting to see really just emerge through some of the RFPs is CBRS access. So that's kind of an emerging trend. The government is looking at how they can use that technology. It meets a coverage need that was required, and you have the security of, not at the same level as the previous conversation, but it's more at the LTE security. So not anyone can get on it. It's a closed network. And with CBRS, that traffic stays local versus in a carrier LTE service, that traffic would leave the base. So that is a very interesting technology. And then thirdly, with the transition of everyone getting ready for 5G, we're seeing more and more DAS solutions being purchased by the government versus a carrier furnished solution. So that's interesting. And our DAS, which is digital and scales more to a campus environment, not just the building environment, is key, I think, also. So that's getting a lot of traction. And and then you put all those together, like say that full spectrum offering. No one really else is now putting together all of those technologies. So that's really the trend we see is, it's not any one, it's the fact that they want to use them all.
It's funny when you talk about this. We had a podcast we did with a partner, Spearpoint, some time ago, and they talked about they have a network in a box solution, and it was kind of targeted at, take the oil field, for example. Right, they need to go out and stand up an oil pad, and they give them a network in a box solution that has CBRS and everything tied into it. And when I listen to you talk about this, I think that's probably more like a network in a semi-trailer solution, because when you look at standing a base up, right, we can pretty much provide everything there end to end, throw it in the back of a semi, send it to the base, they can get there and take it out and install it and stand it up.
Yeah, now I'm finally on the team that gets that infrastructure piece too, because that's a big part of what makes this work. If you don't have the right fiber, if you're not running Cat 6A, you're not ready for the next generation network. So I think sometimes just legacy. I'm a legacy router head. Started my career managing routers. You look at that technology, sometimes you just assume that infrastructure is going to be there. So and if it doesn't work, nothing else works. So it's kind of exciting now to be at that level and then to be able to layer the technologies on top of it.
How much adoption is there of network automation within your space? The reason I'm asking this is it's pretty fresh because the conversation I had with David Carlson yesterday, we were talking about how next step kind of things, especially in the support world, people are looking more now at network automation, right? Ansible and solutions like that. Is that something that's being adopted, or is it still, you're a network engineer, go stand it up and work it?
So what's funny is these technologies have existed for a long time in networking. Actually, Foundry Networks had the capabilities to collect network statistics through S-Flow and roll them into network management, alarm, and take actions, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone was deathly afraid of it. So I think, the history has been there. I think now it's more refined, it's more accessible, it's more programmable, it's not proprietary. So as we move towards that and there's more understanding and the actual customer is more involved in what they look at, what alarms they can set, and can see that happening, they tend to trust it more, right? And then two, I just think overall, we've come a long way just with everything else being automated, right? It's I installed a new security system for my house that's 20 years old and got the cameras, so now you get the alarms. My front door locks at 10 o'clock if I forget to lock it, mm-hmm. right? So just the nature of what we run into on a day-to-day basis, that automation and intelligence is in our everyday lives. So I think with the standardization of networks, right, and especially in the government and the multi-vendor interoperation, having some of these tools now is a little bit more accepted. So I don't think they're at a point where they're just going to turn the key over yet. I don't think many businesses are, but looking at that and taking more of the routine problems, isolating those definitely will happen. From a deployment standpoint, auto configurations, we've been doing that. That is something we come to bear with our cloud solutions. So I think it's happening more and more, but still, I think the tendency is to have a gate when you can of an individual that maybe pushes the button yes or no for the major changes, but for some of the more rudimentary things, doing resets on certain things that don't affect the whole network, maybe only impact a user or a switch, a little bit more acceptable now than it was maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, and there's so much overhead in networks now, especially because of the size. I mean, they grow so much, and you start to stack services upon services on top of them. I mean, they're really the backbone of operational infrastructure, right? I mean, everything. And we talk about all these different technologies that are out there and how great they are and how well they function, and then you turn around and look at, you can look at any network anywhere and you can come up with a laundry list of things that could be done to it. I mean, most federal space is probably a little bit excluded from this, but in private space, especially, take a look at IPv6. I mean, it's been a slower adoption for that, even though we're still depleting address space at a record pace, and we keep going down that path. That kind of stuff still keeps happening, but you can come up with solutions to implement in your network to improve it and improve the overall health over and over and over, and you just continue to do that. So it's not something that's ever going away, right?
No, and I think as that technology combines with things like our automated, provisioning on the infrastructure or AIM platform, taking that physical layer data, feeding it into that layer 2, layer 3 level data, and then letting people focus more on security where the focus should be. So I think that's the key to automation now is, taking a lot of the noise things out of the way and letting those analysts and engineers focus on the problems of the day, which is to me really security. And that's where the the people power needs to go to is focusing on those areas. Obviously, automation is doing a lot in that space, but the state of networking is such that we shouldn't have to pay that much attention to those problems. That the solutions for those are well known, and as long as I have that right data from layers 1, 2, and 3, should be able to let loose a little bit more and let the network manage itself a little bit.
Yeah, and you're in a position where any conversation you have and any table you sit down at with any level of customer, it's going to be a very security heavy conversation. And when you look at that, when you become so security centric, you get really good at it, right? And you start to understand all of the different aspects that you have to look at with each connection point, each ingress point, egress point, everything. Are there things that you've seen in your sector that you think this stuff really should be applied to other sectors as well and more commonly spread in terms of information?
Yeah, sometimes I'm surprised just if you just look at like application security, complex passwords, all those InfoSec things that you should do anyways, and that some companies still don't do it. They just leave themselves vulnerable. So the nice part about the government is they have standard processes and procedures that are documented, right? You have regulations that say, for a piece of software to be loaded on the network, it has to meet all these requirements. Users can only do certain things on their machines, right? And it's not, I want to do it because I'm a certain rank. It's applied across the board. So when you get that standardization, right, it makes the network more secure. And you can trust the network a little more. So not that you do, right? So zero trust is the word of the day.
Yep.
But when all of that's in place, you're less vulnerable. So I think that's the biggest thing that still amazes me is that with some commercial companies, they just don't follow any standard practices. And there's ISO standards that the government builds on, and all companies should really be following those. And I'm surprised that probably from a publicly traded company that you don't see to be publicly traded that you have to have those standards in place. But
yeah.
But I think that's the biggest lesson learned, and it is ingrained in the technology from the government service, because you have there isn't one network, there's multiple networks, right? So that's the big joke in federal. A lot of times it's like at any given point you have a network for your building, you have a guest network, you have then possibly 2 to 3 networks for different classifications of traffic. So it's and those higher ones are air gapped, right? So it's never just about one, it's about what's the right level of data you have, where did it go, and how am I managing those? So, so the complexity and the scale, right? The other pieces, you're not talking about Fortune, 5,000 companies. You're talking about Fortune 50 companies, right? And the scale has to be. So one of the reasons we do well with the federal government is the legacy of the companies dealing with carriers and managed service providers. So I like to say if you can handle carrier scale, right, and carriers want to do business with you probably have a product if you can apply the correct security measures to it to scale at the government level, right? And that's like you're saying. So security is key, but also scale and manageability and making it easy to manage with that security is the hard part. And that's why there's not as many companies doing business with the federal government as there are, in the commercial market, right? Because you have to have all three of those: scale, manageability, and security.
Yeah, and one of the best things I ever heard, and this is when I first started in this industry, probably in the late 90s, was if you really want to secure that device and you want to make it 100% concrete secure, unplug it. It's the best way to secure it.
And they do that sometimes. It's a network.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things to where time, experience, and exposure will teach you that there are certain ways you do things and certain ways you don't. And that's one thing. I've stood in front of classrooms and I have my certain things that I nitpick on and harp on, that these are really key to make sure that your network stands up and it's stable, it's secure, it's well managed, it's well maintained. And you just harp on those things. So, we're talking about a lot of products and things that happen, but in your space, there's also services that come into that as well, right? So when we look at the services aspect of it, what kind of new or different angles were you able to come at customers with different service offerings that we have?
So luckily, the company is really flexible with service offerings that we provide. So we have our standard offerings, and then we also can do custom packages. And we work in multi environments, right? So we have carrier partners, we have standard VAR partners, we have full systems integrators. So the needs of any one of those partners can be very different, right? We work with some partners that are in very secure environments, right? And can manage the whole network and just need back-end support, right? So the great thing about CommScope is that they can operate in all those environments. So from standard break fix to they want us to provide on-site engineers with service support managers. Our Bulldog offering, is a very robust offering. Lets you scale to that level and really, be the main force from a CommScope deliverable into that customer. We deliver that through our partners. We don't right now take direct contracts from the government, so we're not a prime or a sub, but being able to scale to that level is important. Some of the professional services that we've kept from the Era side are fully managed Wi-Fi services. So a lot of people don't know this, but I'll give them a plug. We have a cloud service that is used on the enterprise side, right? But we also have a service that professional service can do a custom cloud managed service for a customer too. So I think the combination of those things, being able to deliver on-site engineers, to deliver customer services managers that are the point of contact and are constantly watching over what's happening in that network, to our standard break fix is really the key. And it's, the more services you can provide the customer, the better they are. Because realistically, that's what they're buying from you is an SLA, right? No one really buys a networking equipment, for its technical features. They have a need for that, and they want it to meet an SLA to their customers. So when you can wrap services around that and help partners fill in the gaps that they may or may not have, is really the key to success. And in our biggest accounts where we're selling the most equipment, we have those type of services involved.
That's really interesting. Yeah, we shout out to David Carlson and the Bulldog folks, because I know they do a great job over there too. So,
yeah, Ron Boggio is our lead, reports to Dave, and they do an awesome job for us.
Yeah, they really do. And I talked to David about this, and I've been in positions before in former jobs that I've had where we've had that type of support agreement, and it's really an interesting level of service, because it's just the level of depth that you get with certain things and different conversations that you can have. It really kind of opens your eyes. I don't think you can undervalue that service. You really can't, because the guys that are sitting there, boots on the ground, dealing with the day in, day out operational aspect of it, they in turn end up getting a different perspective on things, because you have somebody that's so well engrossed in your own technology, internal processes, has a little bit of insight into roadmaps and things like that. So it really changes that conversation just at the engineer level, which is going to naturally flow up too. So yeah, that's really cool. So one thing I want to ask you this question, because of all of the different things that you've seen throughout your career, whether it's what you're doing now, the Kennedy Space Center thing really is intriguing to me. I've been there, I've visited it. It's an awesome facility. And when you sit back and you look and you think, I can't believe that network exists. Do you have anything that you can think back on in your career and just pinpoint something that was happening that you think, wow, that was amazing?
Well, like I said, I've been fortunate to serve in the military. It was in a group that had, we supported a reconnaissance aircraft. So, that network that we pulled data off of that Intel platform, process it, the complexity that existed. Some of the first fiber optic networks, this is like in the late 80s, was deployed in there. So it's just, the effort that our government goes to secure our country realistically is pretty interesting. So the shuttle is kind of right up there. I would say the healthcare networks are right up there too. So I kind of look at the more mission-oriented impact to the level of service, and then you've got the cool factor, right? So, luckily in my career, I've been involved with a couple of those. The other one that I would say is a little bit more recent is we support some of the super collider networks across the country. So I won't name the specific sites, but over the course of my career, I've pretty much got to visit all of them. And if you haven't seen one of those or aren't familiar with what I'm talking about, Google linear accelerator. There's one in New York, one in Virginia, one out in California, and just unbelievable technology. So, be involved with some of the support networks around those type of things. And then just my favorite area to focus on is related. That is the DOE network. Some of the science and things that are going on that you get to see while delivering cutting edge networks, fiber optics capabilities, are just incredible. So it's, one of the reasons why I've gone back and forth. I've worked in, the service provider industry. I've sold and managed sales teams in the commercial market, but keep getting drawn back to the federal market. And I think it's because of that innate, sense of, hey, you're contributing to something that is unbelievably cool and impactful. So, not that the other jobs aren't as important, and they're definitely, mission critical, but there's, to me, just something about working on networks that have a purpose than, versus ones that are just generating money, right? So that's, those are the cool things that keeps me kind of centered in the wanting to be in the federal market.
That's a really cool story. And, this is going to be the 21st episode of the podcast. And I think we made it 20 episodes with avoiding all of the conspiracy nuts, but you've mentioned colliders and 5G in one podcast. So if anybody's going to put this thing out there and there's going to be a transcription available, it's going to get hit. And oh boy, here we go. Federal government 5G colliders. We almost made it the whole way.
Article accelerated.
Yeah. And I can see my evening unfolding because now I'm going to Google that and I'll be sucked into a vortex over that too. So
cool pictures.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Chris, I can't thank you enough for doing this. It's like I said, you have a really interesting story and everything that you've seen and done and are doing. It's really cool to talk to you. So thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Glad you had me on, and can't wait. Maybe the next time you can have me on.
Absolutely. You have a recurring invite and an open door anytime, so I can't wait to have you back. So awesome. All right. Well, thanks for joining me, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Have a good day.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. See you, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Ruckcast. If you just found us for the first time, be sure to follow or subscribe on your platform of choice so you can be notified of future episodes. If you have ideas for future episodes or can't find Ruckcast on your favorite platform, contact us at ruckcast@comscope.com. And as always, thanks for listening.